Hey everybody, it's Damian Questiny. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I've had a couple requests about remote viewing and what the technical side looks like and how the process works on paper. So that's part of what I teach and what I show people who are interested in learning this skill. And I'll show you a few images here at the end. Back in 2008 when I was on Project Avalon Forum, I was teaching people how to remote view back then. And I go back in the archives and I took a couple snapshots of that so I can show you that I was doing that for people even way back when, to kind of give you guys an idea how long I've been doing this stuff. So, but to give you guys an idea, there's actually stages to the process. And those stages have what I would call a distance involved. And this is a way for you to ease your way into the target much better, so you're immersing yourself into the details. But let's back up and kind of describe a little of the preliminary things that take place before you actually get into a remote viewing session. And this is important because there are actually many different aspects to this process, because the remote viewer generally is not supposed to be aware of what the target is. In fact, one of the most important aspects to it is that the remote viewer gets a series of generally coordinates, if you will. Originally started off with there were map coordinates, but eventually they just came up to just a random series of numbers. When I was doing the remote viewing while I was getting paid to do remote viewing, it was always a series of 8 numbers, and there were 4 on top and 4 on the bottom. However, there were a couple times we did have a series of 12, so it was 4, 4, and 4, and those were very, very interesting targets, and many times I'm sure I got a lot of those wrong for some reason, but I think it kind of confused my subconscious in some ways. And I also know that in those particular targets too, I don't know what they were, but at this point, I would say that those particular targets was very difficult for me to have language to describe what it is I was receiving through impressions and expressions in those targets. So anyway, so what happens is that you're generally blind. There are some times that you do get what's called front-loaded on the target, and what front-loaded means is that you're given some information on it. Also, there are other times when your monitor actually knows what the target is and you don't. And there's some bleed through, I would say, for some type of remote viewers, not necessarily all of them, but some type of remote viewers are able to like read the other person's mind, if you will, and they can extrapolate information from that. And so there's always that, that question in people's mind if a remote viewer is actually doing that or not, because it's a lot easier to crack that, because with people, there is a resonance that we've talked about many times before, that you can actually tune into somebody and you can just extrapolate their information that way. It's kind of like holding up a card and saying, is it a star? And they go, oh my gosh, it's a star. Or holding up another card and they go, squiggly lines, and you're like, yeah, it's squiggly lines, look at that, wow, crazy. So it's, it's kind of like, that kind of thing, because you're connected that way. So having my coffee. My daughter wants to go to the gym and do some Pilates, so I'll be taking her over there here in a second. So I'm just trying to run this quick video before I go, because I'm gonna go, shoot some hoops and stuff with my buddies. So I'm trying to just throw this out there. Anyway, so it's important that you don't know what the target is as well. And the way it worked for us is we actually received an envelope. And generally there'd be somebody who's called a monitor on the other side of us who is the one who's going to be administering the target. So they actually open the envelope, or they read the numbers to me. And then what happens next is that you write down those numbers. And as you write down those numbers, it's important too that everything has its certain place where it goes. And so when you write down the numbers, that's technically like stage 1 or phase 1. Everybody has their own way of describing this section that they're in before they get into the matrix itself, and they start drawing things, which is that's kind of the fun part, but it's also the most exhausting. But anyway, so you got these, so you write down the numbers, and then there's generally what's called a spontaneous movement of the pen. Excuse me, I'm getting a text there. And then so the spontaneous movement of the pen is will drum up some type of an impression of the target itself. Okay, and what I usually do is I'll probe that part of the, whatever the movement was that I did, I'll probe the lines on that, and I'll, is it soft? I'll try and stay as basic as I possibly can on the impressions that I'm receiving. Is it wet? Is it mushy? Is it slick? You know, does my pen go into the thing, or is it a bounce off? You know, those kind of things is kind of what I'm looking for as descriptors. I'm not trying to say, you know, oh, that's you know, that's the Taj Mahal. You know, I'm not trying to do that right away, because you know, that would be later on when you're further down in the different phases, because you're trying to keep your distance, right? You're trying to get it as basic as you can, as reptilian as you can, for the conspiracy tinfoil hat wearers out there. So then you got so you do your whole, you know, spontaneous move of the pen. You do this a few times. The reason why you do this a few times is because you may pick up different impressions. So for me, because of the type of remote viewer that I am, I actually do it at minimum 4 times, and each time I think of a body part. So I'll think of the mind. You know how I am with the elements and things like that. I'll think of the mind, I'll think of the heart, I'll think of the gut, and I'll think of the body. And each one of these things should give me a different impression. Now let's say my spontaneous movement of the pen was a kind of like a ribbon that loops around under itself and it's upside down. Generally, I would consider that to be like a person who's deceased. Maybe a historical figure, perhaps, that's no longer around but has influence still. So I'm picking up on this person inside the target. Now let's say that loop is upwards. So what would take place then is that I would generally think that person is alive today. So that person would have an influence in the world at this moment, because it's up in my matrix field and how I interpret the target. And that's very important, everybody, is that you need to understand that every single person is very, very different on how they accumulate information on the target. And I went into this in previous videos. There are several different ways, not just consciousness, you know, mental remote viewers. There's body remote viewers. There's, you know, toroid remote viewers. There's all these different, you know, types. There's feeling remote viewers. You know, the feeling remote viewers can get some serious detail on reasons and the why of things that take place. So those are very valuable for, you know, people who are in remote viewing. They want those kind of people around them because they want to know the reasons why things are the way they are a lot of the times. And the feeling ones are gut oriented, and they really can draw that information out very, very well. And they can also influence targets better. So anyway, so I kind of wanted to share that part. So that's kind of phase 1. You do the spontaneous movements of the pen. My daughter's up right now, so I'm going to finish the rest of this in a little bit later. But I kind of want to give you guys just a quick idea on how remote viewing works up to this point, because I have been asked several times, can you kind of go into the technical side? And I also wanted to show you a couple of these images I'm going to throw in the back of this, so you can see that, you know, I've been trying to help out with people with this stuff for a long time. So if you guys want to contact me, you can, and I can teach you how to remote view. All right, thanks for listening. Cheers.